morning, Hein. Welcome
Good
to the
morning.
show.
Good morning,
I
Yorick.
I wanted to invite you because you are the co-founder of Microdosing Institute and Microdose.nl.
Yeah,
I think microdosing and plant medicine are a major factor in my health, and I think it should be for a lot of more people in their health journey, in their spiritual journey, discovering themselves. So welcome to the show, and could you introduce yourself a bit more? How did you start on your journey?
okay, yeah, like you said, my name is Hein Pijnnaken. I'm 49 years old, almost 50 next week. And yeah, I've always been intrigued by psychedelics and journeying, inner journeying. So like I've always been since my 17th, been a psychonaut, let's say. And so, yeah, the first time I took psychedelics, I was very impressed, and I had my first universal insights back then already. So I started at a young age. Yeah, I was very interested in all kinds of ways of expanding your consciousness, like meditation, and I studied Buddhism and shamanism and those kind of things. So yeah, and to make a long story short, after 30 years of using psychedelics and studying the potential healing of psychedelics, I stumbled upon microdosing in 2016, early 2016. My best friend passed away. He suffered from cluster headaches, and I wanted to find out why high doses of psychedelics, or mushrooms in this case, worked to abort his cluster headaches. Because for over the 20 years, we found out by the website and organization Cluster Busters that psychedelics and mushrooms could abort cluster attacks. So for over 20 years, I guided him when he had cluster headaches, and then we did a trip together, and then sometimes it aborted his cycle. But of course, high doses are very hard to plan. So a lot of times we were too late. And so, after years and years of having these cluster headaches, he came into isolation and couldn't take it anymore. And then he passed away due to the causes of cluster headaches, let's say. So I wanted to find out if microdosing could be like a preventive medicine for him. And I started to experiment with microdosing, came in contact with Jim Fadiman at a very early stage. And since then we've become friends, and he's a mentor. And by his work, inspired by his work, I decided to build a website and to start a platform, although I didn't know how to do that. So then the first microdosing event came in Holland, in Amsterdam, and I met Jacobine van der Weijden. And she was from the Psychedelic Society of the Netherlands, and organized that microdosing event, and there were 120 people or something. So we were very, surprised by how it lived, and in that early age of 2016 already. So we said, hey, we need to have to build a community and map who is microdosing and why people are microdosing. So let's build a website. Can you help me out? And because at the first microdose I took in 2016, I thought, okay, this is a little bit too much, but I had the insight of making a website out of it, and claimed the domain names like microdosing.nl and microdose.nl and microdosering.nl and all these domain names. Like, okay, I have to save this because this is interesting. I was very skeptical at the moment also. So with a little bit of Dutch soberness, I wanted to find out if it's if it has the benefits that everybody talks about. And most articles came from Silicon Valley back then. And so I gathered all these benefits, and there were like 26 benefits. And I was like, okay, this is a miracle cure if that's true. And I didn't believe it. I still don't believe it. But I have, after 2 months of microdosing, I saw a slightly change in my whole perspective. And so sort of an inner revolution came out of me. So it was very subtle though. So I need to observe it very well. But yeah, I still felt that there were subtle changes in my behavior and in my way of perceiving things. So to get back on why we started the platform, we wanted to map who is microdosing, why people are microdosing, what are the pros, the cons, the benefits, the risks. And so we started collecting data and writing the website. Then we launched the website. We built a platform around it on Facebook and Instagram. And later on we built a bridge to the scientists and the researchers that were doing microdosing studies and needed a platform or a community with people who wanted to participate on their surveys and their studies. So that's in the early stages how we came to the Microdosing Institute. Back then it was called microdosing.nl. We were only Dutch because in Holland you can microdose legally with magic truffles. So we could speak very openly, and that helped us to get more understanding also. And one of our main agendas was also to end the taboo of that still surrounds psychedelics and the use of psychedelics. So microdosing is a very good tool to make it discussable, and that people discuss it and they're not afraid of it, and they like to see it as a food supplement or like homeopathic or something. So that was
quite a journey.
Yeah.
And also interesting that it started with adversity with your friend, for example, from the cluster headaches. I'm sorry to hear that, by the way. One of my best friends also had cluster headaches it was incurable at that stage. So I know a bit how that goes. And she also used mushrooms.
Mm-hmm.
What you mentioned at the beginning of your story is the universal insights you gained from microdosing. I think for the listener, it's good to explore first what the idea of microdosing is. I mean, we have psychedelics, we have mushrooms, and indeed psychedelics are a bit of a taboo, or they sound like, oh, that's drugs, but I never did drugs and I microdose on a daily basis. So could we explore a bit about what is microdosing at the core?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well, microdosing is taking a very tiny amount of a substance, a classical psychedelics like magic mushrooms, like magic truffles, like LSD or legal analogs of LSD, like 1CP or 1P LSD. You can microdose with San Pedro, with ayahuasca, with iboga, with Amanita muscaria, all these. But the main classic psychedelics is magic mushrooms, where psilocybin containing mushrooms and LSD, and you take it for over a longer period of time. So microdosing is really that you make a journey out of it and not taking it once, because the hidden power or effects are after a longer period of time. So let's say 3 weeks or something, then slowly there's a micro shift in your perspective. If you have a positive effect, of course. So for some people, they don't have a positive effect, or it doesn't do anything for them. I think we believe it has to do with the phase of your process where you're at. But so taking it over a long period of time, using a sort of a protocol. And there are different protocols, the standard protocols, the Fadiman protocol, because he initiated it and was the rediscoverer of microdosing. You can Google him and you will find all kinds of articles and podcasts around James Fadiman. And that protocol is 1 day on, 2 days off, 1 day on, 2 days off. That's research protocol designed to find out what a microdose day is. And we believe microdosing has a 2 days effect, although it doesn't have a direct effect the second day. It has an indirect mini afterglow. And for people who listening who did a high dose journey, they know that there is a sort of an afterglow after your journey for 2 to 4 weeks. Like you feel reborn, you feel reset. And with microdosing, it's very subtle, but it's 2 days effect. Like the second day, people also report back to us that they feel very at ease, milder in their reactions, being more in the present moment, those kind of things. So, and the third day is also a break, and that is to look back on what is the difference between a normal day and a microdose day. And yeah, if you do that for a couple of times and you write a journal, then people report it back to Jim Fadiman in this case. So that is how his protocol was developed. Yeah, later on we came to find out that if you have a burnout or ADHD or a depression, then sometimes people don't want, or it is interfering their momentum to have a third day of a break. So we started to experiment with the microdosing every other day protocol. So you take it one day on, one day off. And there's some other protocols we can dive into maybe later. But yeah, so yeah, what the main thing is that you take it for at least 1 month if it doesn't interfere in your normal life and it feels okay and it feels good. And then you can proceed for 2 months or 10 weeks. And then you need to take a break to reset your receptors, to look back on what you learned, and also to avoid tolerance, because psychedelics build up tolerance very quick. That is also why these protocols are designed, to avoid tolerance. We don't want to have a Western approach, like take medication 2 times a day or something. Less is more, we always say. So yeah, and also avoid tolerance, because your receptors are filled up and you need to give them a break sometimes. So yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, when I first started microdosing, I did the every other day because I was in a burnout. And at first I was consuming it because I wanted to cure something. But earlier this year, or I think it was the start of this year, I started a microdosing coaching at the Microdosing Institute. And what I learned from that was that you should not only consume it, but you also integrate it. And I want to get back at that later. But that was literally the biggest shift for me in microdosing journey, that the integration part in your daily life is so important, and you will definitely reap the benefits of it.
Yeah.
You mentioned multiple microdosing substance to microdose with. If we pick 3, can we pick 3 substances to name the benefits of, like truffles or one LSD?
Well, for a long period of time, the reports that Jim Fadiman got, over 8,000 reports for over 60 countries, the benefits of like LSD and mushrooms, there were not so different. So the main benefit of like having a better mood and mental well-being, those kind of things that apply to both of them. There are some differences, of course, but what we always say, and that's what I said at the beginning, like I gained on the internet, I was trying to find out, okay, what are the benefits? Everybody wants to know that. But you also know that every person is unique. So every person takes it for a different with a different intention. You took it for to decrease your depression or whatever. So I took it to just discover what happened to me. So these benefits that everybody shouts about and expresses, being more creative and having more focus and more energy, they don't apply to everybody. But what I like to say is that there are 2 main benefits, that if people have a positive experience, then there are 2 benefits. One is that you feel more connected to yourself and to your surroundings and nature, and you experience that you feel more in the present moment, feel more in the now. And these 2 pillars can lead to all kinds of different benefits. And that depends on the people, the person who takes it. So I can like promote it and say, oh, these benefits, and there's a whole list on our website, and you probably, people who are dive into microdosing can find these benefits. But I like to say these 2 pillars, it's like a tool for mindfulness. being more in the present moment, get less distracted by your mental distortion and your rumination, and those kind of things can lead to all kinds of benefits. And for some people, it's a decrease in burnout and depression. And for some other people, it is more being more empathetic. That's
Empathetic.
Empathetic towards my children, for instance. I felt like, I can move on the same level they are, and then we had more connection, and we had more mutual respect for each other, instead of playing the policeman and saying you can do this and you can do that, because that didn't help or work. And so for me it was that, and for me also in my personal experience was I felt more proactive. And my wife always laughs about it if I mention this, because I was more proactive in the things I liked to do, but not in the doing the dishes or the wash or whatever. But so I felt like procrastination that really helped me to tackle that, and that is what my benefits are. I can only talk about my own benefits, and of course I can relate to other people's benefits. For instance, LSD, if you have to choose a substance and a benefit of it, is that a lot of people with ADHD benefit a little bit more with LSD, because it also binds to the dopamine receptors instead of only the serotonin receptors. So we just finished an ADHD microdosing study in collaboration with Maastricht University. So, and it still was a bit unclear if LSD was the main substance that has the most benefits. But for us in the community, we feel that we get reports back to us that people with ADHD benefit more with the substance LSD, or the legal versions of LSD, like 1CP LSD. But for instance, if you are depressed, and some people are depressed and just need to get off this couch and do things, so then LSD might be a better choice. But some people need just to have mental balance and emotional balance. So, and then psilocybin containing mushrooms can be a little bit more appropriate. And it all has to do with your own energy level, and it has to resonate with your energy. So that's why at first you can, it is interesting to, in the first month or so, to find out which substance works best for you. And it isn't like, okay, I'm depressed, so you take that. That is the Western approach. And we tend we hope that it works like that, but with psychedelics, it doesn't work like that. So, yeah.
No, it definitely makes sense, because sometimes I'm in your Facebook group, obviously, and you see a lot of questions, like, I'm getting too tired. Even I had those comments at the beginning. I'm getting too tired, or I'm feeling more stressed when I use the microdose. But often when we talk with those persons, they realize afterwards, like, oh, it's just emphasizing my stress, or it's just emphasizing how tired I am, but it's not making me more tired. It's making me more aware of how tired I am. That's what I realized at the beginning of my microdose journey.
That's a good realization, because and of course it's easy to say, oh, I get tired from the truffles, and it's easy for us to say, oh, and that's because, and we can make up a whole story. But in the end, it can make you a little bit fatigued or a little bit sleepy. If you take a high dose of mushrooms, people are starting to yawn, and if you take a really high dose, then you fall asleep sometimes. It's like a safety pole. But but it's also starting a process. And it's similar if you are depressed and you have a therapy session, then sometimes after an hour of talking about it, it really drains your energy. And we think that if you microdose and you do it on a regular basis, then you're starting a process, and that costs energy at first, because it is a non-specific mental amplifier. And that is also what you experienced. Like, okay, I'm more aware of my sleepiness. I'm more aware of that I'm irritated about something. So, and then you see in the Facebook group, hey, I got irritated from the mushrooms. or you take a little bit too much, then anxiety can enter, and then you have to lower that dose. But it's also a signal, and that is the most important of microdosing. It points to things, to your patterns, to your behavior, like a signpost. And what also is that it's like a magnifier. You look through the magnifier and not at the magnifier. So it's a catalyst. And so that is why we always say, don't take too much of a microdose, because then you feel the direct effect, and that can be very pleasant, but it also interferes and distracts it from where it points at. So it distracts it, like I get irritated, or I get anxious, or I get triggered by a situation. And then that is signal that you need to do something about that. And that is how microdosing works. So I'm very happy that you realized that at a very early stage, because
Well, mostly because of the community of Microdosing Institute as well. Maybe it's good to fall back on, you have Microdose and Microdosing Institute. The Institute is really helpful because of all the scientific research that it provides. Could you tell more about what you provide at Microdosing Institute?
Yeah, okay. Yeah, we first started to build a community platform, because community is key. We always say first start with connection and with finding the others and like-minded people to talk about your experience, your concern and concerns and your questions that you have. So that was our first goal, but also to provide reliable information. And reliable information is not promoting microdosing, but really seeing it from a realistic point of view. And that's why we also build a bridge to all these researchers, because we tend to not claim anything on our website that hasn't been claimed yet. We refer to anecdotal stories, but then have as a side note say, okay, it hasn't been claimed yet by clinical studies, for instance. So what we provide is like reliable, realistic information based on research, and also the anecdotal stories. But yeah, you can imagine if 60 countries and 8,000 report, because we share with Jim Fadiman, we share these reports and we discuss the risks and those kind of things. But if 60 countries and 8,000 people say similar things, then you can conclude that there is more, then microdosing is more than a placebo effect. And we can talk a little bit about that later on maybe. But yeah, if 8,000 people say, hey, I make healthier choices, I eat better, I sleep better, then yeah, it is worth researching it. That's at least what we can say. So what we provided is, because both Jacobine and me have a coaching background. I'm an NLP coach, and she is a holistic coach. So we started to guide people and coach people at the early times on donation based during meetups and those kind of things. So yeah, we started to design of the knowledge we gained. We started to design 6-week coaching programs. We also provide that, because the power of that is that you're microdosing in a group. And we also launched our first certificate program. And of course, it's almost arrogant to say we gave certificates to people, but it's mostly designed okay, we have gathered information and we've shared information with researchers and with Jim Fadiman. And this information is I think interesting enough to give to other people who are wanting to work with microdosing professionally. And it's not rocket science. Everybody knows that. You just take a microdose and you start your journey. But what we find important is that everybody uses the same language on their websites, for instance, and not promoting things, because we get people on our email they're very desperate and see microdosing as their last resort or their solution to their problems, or as a quick fix or a magic bullet. And we find it very important that people don't misuse that and mislead people with promising advertisement. And so that is also why with a sort of a code of ethics, we want to educate people how you can make the most out of your microdosing journey and how to use it professionally. So that is what we provide. And also, community-based meetups and events. But due to COVID, that has lowered a little bit. Now we're starting to do new events in collaboration with other people and organizations mostly.
Sounds good. Yeah, you referred to, I mean, I don't know if it was specifically you, but the Institute also referred to a scientific program you can join in Maastricht as well, right?
Yeah, there's now a new.
It was a couple of weeks ago that you could join and join the talks and even a walk together. Correct.
I'm not sure if I know which one you refer, because we have similar different projects. We have one with Groningen University, and we did neurofeedback with microdosing, and we started a new program with Maastricht University, but that was linked to our coaching program. So yeah, they wanted to find out if the combination of coaching and microdosing can have benefits, and if have more benefits than without coaching. And of course, it all depends on the person itself, because you can microdose very well on your own. You don't need a coaching program, but it can be helpful to gain some tools and some insights on how you can make the most out of your microdosing journey. So that's why we decided to run these programs, so that's the collaboration with Maastricht University, the last project we have.
Sounds good. Well, I can confirm that your coaching, at least of the Institute, can be very helpful. I had, I believe it was 6 or 8 sessions with Naomi from England. Naomi, if you're listening, it was wonderful.
Okay.
And it definitely helped me because, like I mentioned earlier, when I started on my own, I did the every other day, and it definitely helped me because it gave me more physical awareness. It was like the shift went from my head to my body, and so that I was more able to feel what my body needed at that moment, which at the time was a burnout. So it wasn't, I just needed rest. But yeah, that's physical awareness really helped for me. But when I started the coaching, she really helped me with, okay, you're consuming something that is integrated with your body, but not only with your body, but also with your surroundings, how you interact with the world around you. And yeah, that's definitely some good promo for the coaching program at Microdosing Institute.
Yeah. Yeah, well, we are not healing someone. We are guiding someone to heal himself. So that is what we just do. And yeah, we use microdosing is not the goal of like taking it. It's just a tool or a support of being a little bit more aware of your behavior, or your patterns, of your intention. That is also we learn people how to set an intention and why it's so important to journal, why it's so important not to just take it and go by your day, but really make a little ritual around it, and building a relationship with this plant medicine or earth medicine like truffles and mushrooms are. And also acknowledge that it has a history of 1,000-year use of indigenous people using it for spiritual and religious and medicinal purposes. And then it becomes a little bit more full and more interesting to take it. And yeah, we also have a 5th generation Mazatec medicinal shaman who educates about the history of psilocybin containing mushrooms. And what I find most important and most beautiful is that she really learned us or taught us that we need to acknowledge that these plant medicine and earth medicine have an intelligence, have a spirit, and have something to tell us. And then it becomes very interesting. And then, yeah, that is I think one of the most important things we give people on their journey. And yeah.
Yeah, most definitely. I can confirm. You are very careful with mentioning that it is not the solution, that it is not, that you cannot, I'm looking for the right word, promise anything from it.
Yeah.
But that is because I believe that not everybody at the office can tell their boss that they are on a microdose that day. I think a lot of people would get fired because a lot of people still think you're using drugs during your workday. Do you think, or do you notice that the scientific research that you are providing as well with the Microdosing Institute is helping with that process, that it is getting normalized.
Yeah, for sure. It's normalized in the sense that, of course, you need to be careful how your surroundings is talking about it, and if you have like a zero tolerance profile on your work, you also need to be careful. I had that similar issue, or not issue, but situation. That's why I tended not to take it on my work, and that is why there are different protocols. You can also take 2 days in a week, or 3 days in a week where you don't have to work, or where it's more appropriate. And we didn't touch upon that when we talked about what is microdosing. But the most important is to find your sweet spot, your ideal dose. And we need to talk about that because that's most important. Before you can start microdosing on your work or driving a car or whatever, doing your daily routine, you need to find what your ideal base dose is, where you can function normally in your daily routine. And that can take a few times of taking it in before you know that. But yeah, and the main guidelines is that you have an increase in your social interactions, but you don't giggle all the time, or those kind of things. You can focus and have a concentration on your laptop, for instance, while reading things without staring at it, and the letters starting to dance or something. You don't have any psychedelic effects. That is also very important, like visual distortions. But yeah, so if you start microdosing, do that on a day off when you don't have any obligations. And yeah, if you take too much, that doesn't have to be that doesn't have to mean that it's unpleasant, but it's getting unpleasant if you do it in a wrong setting. So the higher the dose, the more important the setting becomes. That's why with higher doses, people do it in a ceremony, in a yurt, in a safe container. That's really important. But yeah, so that being said, it is really important to find your sweet spot first. And you can read all about it on our website, of course, but yeah. But I forgot your question, actually, due to this side.
The importance of getting it normalized because of the scientific research and stuff.
Yeah. Well, one of my hidden agendas when I stumbled upon microdosing was like, this is very interesting, because I was also always intrigued about the taboo that still surrounds psychedelics and all the Indian stories, I like to call them, that like LSD would have chromosome failure and all these kind of strange things that are all that have been proven wrong by scientists over the past years. So I thought, hey, this microdosing can really learn people in a very safe way the potential healing powers of psychedelics. And it's also that people starting to discuss it and find it interesting. And a lot of people wanted to find an alternative for other medication like Ritalin and SSRIs and those kind of things. So yeah, that was also my hidden agenda. Like, microdosing is sort of a Trojan horse that you slowly ride into society, and then from inside out, people starting to realize that it has benefits, and maybe it has medical benefits. And at least it's worth to find out and doing research. So we slowly start to see it's getting more mainstream, but also that people are more open to it and seeing it with a clean vision instead of judgment of all kinds of Indian stories. So,
do you experience a lot of boundaries in growing that, expanding the institute? I mean, boundaries from when you want to organize an event and they ask you for what is it, do you ever experience a boundary in people that don't want you to spread the gospel?
No, not yet, actually. So there, like the venues we used to rent out, like Mirror Center and other meetup places or something. We didn't encounter anything. As long as we just discuss microdosing, that is not illegal. We do like financial platforms, like PayPal, for instance. They ban all companies who are related to psychedelics. Instagram, Facebook, they all have like algorithms that if you use psilocybin or LSD or microdosing, that you get the shadow banned, or I don't know how it's called. And sometimes your whole account it will be deleted. A lot of psychedelic organizations suffer from that. And that is really, really hypocrite, because like Meta or Facebook and Instagram, they come from Silicon Valley, and almost everybody microdoses there. And the whole money of the whole Silicon Valley tech world is surrounded by psychonauts, and Steve Jobs is one of the very good example who was open about his LSD use. But so yeah, and like if you have a company, and we decided to be a company as a Microdosing Institute because we also offer services, then yeah, it's very hard to get a business account, bank account, for instance, and to find payment service also. So a lot of payment services also, decide not to work with us. So that's the struggle we have, and a lot of people. But yeah, they're also getting more interested in it at the other hand, because it's getting more mainstream, and they also know, it's also something we can make money out of. So yeah, it's slowly maybe changing, but that's a struggle we have sometimes.
Yeah, sometimes I see a lot of legalization in America or in even Australia, because if you want to get cured on your depression, this is starting to get more traction, I believe. So that's interesting, and let's hope the future is bright for microdosing and the related substance. You mentioned the type of dose that fits perfectly for you. When I referred to my journey, I started with 0.3 or something, and now it's getting more intuitive. Sometimes I take 1 or 0.5. It's between those ranges for daily use. But could you elaborate a bit on the different types of doses? I believe they have also the heroes dose. That's a bigger dose, right? I'm not really familiar with those kind of names.
Okay, yeah, well, of course, there's not only microdosing, but you also have high doses or macrodosing, whatever you want to call it. That word was coined because people talking about microdosing. So, but there's a whole range between it, of course. You have like museum dose or concert dose. People tend to say, mention or call it like that. And you take like 1 gram of dried mushrooms or 50 to 100 micrograms of LSD. And you can still navigate, and you can still talk and make conversations and those kind of things. And you have journey doses, and you take a high dose, like 3 to 5 grams of dried truffles or dried mushrooms. Yeah, with all kinds of different effects, of course. But if you take a really high dose, then the purpose is to get a mystical experience, and people starting to experience that they feel one with everything and be connected with everything, and ego disillusion. So your ego gets thrown out to the background. So yeah, I don't know what you want to know about these effects, or what the differences is, but.
Yeah, what ranges should we think about when we look at microdosing? I mean,
okay, yeah. Well, it's very important to always mention that if you're talking about mushrooms, you're talking about dried mushrooms, because we also use magic truffles in Holland, and they are fresh because they can't be processed because that's illegal. So these are talked fresh, but they have like a different weight. So it's very important to always mention if they're dried or are fresh. So the range of dried mushrooms is between 0.05 to 0.3 or 4. After like 0.5 is already starting to become a mini dose for most of the people. Along the way, during the last 10 years, Jim Fadiman also adjusted these different microdose levels, especially with LSD, because at first he said 10 to 20 micrograms, but then he noticed that 20 micrograms is way too much for like 95% of the people. People who are in an autistic spectrum, they need more of a microdose. So that is maybe why, at first people sometimes reported that they took like 20 micrograms and then started to feel something. But for a microdose of LSD, for instance, then you take like 3 micrograms to 15 micrograms. That's an average microdose. With fresh truffles, it's around 0.25 or 3 grams of fresh magic truffles. That's a microdose also. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, it's also interesting, but we will touch on that later, that after I did my first ayahuasca ceremony, I started taking higher doses to reach another effect than what I wanted to experience before. But we'll touch on that later. You were talking about expanding consciousness also because of this substance. At the first meetup you mentioned, there were like 120 people.
Yeah.
Do you notice some sort of trend that more and more people are navigating towards microdosing?
Yeah, because it's getting more mainstream, of course, other different groups are now entering the stage and wanted to find out if if microdosing can be of help or of support. The main group is the group who does it, like the biohackers who do it for personal development, for mental health and increase in mental well-being. That's the main group. And then there's also a very big group who does it for medicinal purposes, or like who have depression, ADHD, burnout, PMS, so these kind of things. And of course, because we collected a lot of anecdotal stories, we started to find out that microdosing and psychedelics in general seem to communicate with your natural healing system. That's a term Jim Fadiman always uses, because it seems to rebalance the disbalance or in your system. And that's why so interesting that people also starting to notice that they have physical benefits, like their skin starts to feel better, because a lot of these kind of issues are psychosomatic. So if your psyche is more in balance and you get less stressed, then it also reacts to your physical body, of course. It's a whole holistic perspective and a holistic system that operates down. So that's really interesting. Yeah. What else I wanted to say about this?
Well, if we look at the expanding of consciousness, and not only per individual, but also as a whole, as a community, maybe it's just because I just started a more serious journey in this realm, but I feel like there are starting to get more communities also that want to expand their consciousness and using those substances as well. I mean, you see feminine, masculine groups, you see microdosing groups, you see a lot of retreats. I mean, I can imagine it's good for business, but it's also a nice development in this space, right?
Yeah, and that is also because and that's why we collect anecdotal stories and we put them on their website. We always ask if people have a very special experience to share this with the community and with us, so we can that it relates to other people. Like, for instance, 3 years ago we found out or 4 years ago, that people with ADHD benefited from microdosing. So, and then we started to write more about it and ask university to write a study about it, because we wanted to find out if we can really claim that. And that also is with PMS, for instance. So it seems that it rebalances the your hormonal system for females, but of course we can't claim that yet, so we need to find out with surveys and studies to if that's really true. And then people think, hey, they read this and then they want to try to find out. So then this group grows of women who struggle with PMS, for instance, premenstrual situation. I don't know what the shortage is of that, but new groups starting to emerge. And like you said, the biggest group is that who wants to do personal development, we live a healthy life, and really to use it as a tool for personal development, for personal growth. And how I approach that is that I use how do you do that personal development? That is to observe your behavior, to observe your patterns, your triggers, your things, and microdosing really can be of help with that, because if you set an intention on that day and you take a microdose, and you say an intention is not a goal on its own. It's more like, where do you want to be connected to? I want to be connected to my patience, for instance. Like, I'm very impatient sometimes. So I'm going to observe this day when I take this microdose to find out where the triggers are without judgment, just observing. And that's why I always use the word stalking, or like if you hunt for a prey, like hunter-gatherers in used to do, then you observe your prey. So let's say you are the prey yourself. So you observe your prey, yourself to find out where your triggers are. But if you judge yourself too much, then you get frustrated because you think, okay, this is the trigger and I always do it, and it's on an automatic pilot, and I'm bad, and I'm like, and then all these implemented patterns and thinking about negative thinking about yourself starting to emerge. So you really need to have a mindset of being gentle to yourself, that you are a human being and you are special, and you have, during your life, you have conditioned yourself with all kinds of patterns and mostly patterns and conventions that you don't need anymore in your adult life, but just they're still around. And if you are gentle to yourself and observe without judgment, that really helps to make a shift, to make a change. So that's how I used it at the first time. And then and what I also want to say is that microdosing, that is proven with 2 studies, that it alters your time perception. So what it means is that is like, it says that it almost proves that you feel more in the present moment, because it seems to prolong your time perception, and that is why you experience it as feeling more in the present moment. But between the trigger and your response in daily routine, in your situation, there's a space. And within that space, there's your freedom to choose differently. And most of the people who have like embedded patterns, they react in a conditioned state, in an automatic pilot state. And microdosing helps it to stretch it a little bit so that you have time to choose differently, choose a different emotion, choose a different reaction. And we think, and of course that's my hypothesis, but we think that there's lies the benefit of microdosing, that, for instance, if you are angry, sometimes people say count to 10, and then you count to 10, and then you can have a different emotion afterwards. And maybe it works a little bit like that. So,
sounds legit. It definitely does. And what I also find interesting is that some people want to use it for like a symptom, which is not the goal per se, but for some people is. And then because they take the substance, they experience, they take it for a linear cause, like I want to get rid of my headache. But when they start that journey, the effects expand and the awareness expands, and then they get aware of a lot of more stuff they're suffering from, and they can get in touch with that even more. That's what I like about microdosing. It's not a linear solution.
Yeah, that's similar. What we always say is that it doesn't give you what you want, but sometimes also what you need. So, and that is also why I refer to that it's so important that you acknowledge that these plant and earth medicine have an intelligence and they have something to teach you. And it's also, if you abuse psychedelics, for instance, people say if microdosing is so beneficial, isn't it addictive? But if you abuse it, then it will teach you it would teach you that you are abusing it. So how do you say it? In Dutch? It's like I don't know how to call it in English, but it learns you the facts on that you are abusing it. So, and of course it builds up tolerance very quick, and that's a safety knob of psychedelics. So if you take a high dose today, you have to take the double dose tomorrow, and the third day you have to take a triple dose, and then it doesn't work anymore. And so it builds up tolerance very quick. But to get back on stalking yourself and observing yourself, I think that's really, really important. Then for people who are biohacking their system, I think they can relate to it, that you need to find your triggers, why you eat so unhealthy, when you eat so unhealthy, and how can you tackle that?
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. And that's why I think microdosing has such a connection with biohacking, because biohacking has the image of, I want to get stronger and improve and enhance everything. But to me, biohacking is an intention of understanding own self, all the processes that's going on in your body, in your mind, in your consciousness, and to see if you can improve for the sake of improving what you need instead of improving for a better result. And I think microdosing helps extremely good in expanding that consciousness of own self. It can guide you. But what you said about the intelligence, I find that the intelligence of plants, I find that really interesting, because in Western society, I believe that is not a normal perspective, because when people look in their garden or outside or in the forest, they just see a plant or a tree and like almost a dead entity or something. But what you mentioned on intelligence is that we can interact with those plants, and that sounds like really far-fetched for people in the Western society, don't you think?
Yeah, we have moved away from that. Of course, we have moved away from nature, and we see that as you have nature and you have yourself. But of course, we are nature. We are not part of nature. We are nature, and it's. I think psychedelics learn us to reconnect with that resonance of life, with that we are connected to, and we are nature again. So that is also a really beautiful insight that these plant medicine can give you. And then like Paul Stamets said, we were at Breaking Convention last week or two weeks ago already, and he's almost preaching that psilocybin makes better people, makes better human beings, and that if more people start to learn these experiences, and they take care more about their environment and nature. So that's very important.
I think that's beautiful. And because we use microdose substance, of course, but you also have on your website, for example, like chaga, lion's mane, turkey tail. What else do you have?
Accepts. Reishi. You mean on the online shop? You mean?
Yeah, for example, yeah. And I think what I love about the similarities, of course, microdosing. Maybe you can explain the differences between those supplements and microdosing, because, go ahead.
Well, the main difference is that these are medicinal mushrooms. We can't say if you're selling it commercially, you can't say medicinal mushrooms. You have to say functional mushrooms, because the medicinal purposes are not clinically proven, but they have been used for thousands of years by the Chinese and Japanese cultures. And the most important thing is that people think, because they're also mentioned on a microdose shop and also on microdose articles, that you microdose with these medicinal mushrooms, but you don't actually. You take a daily dose, and you take a daily dose. You don't have to use a protocol. You can take that every day, and you take not a microdose, or else it won't have the medicinal benefits. And it doesn't have these like lion's mane, cordyceps, chaga, reishi, turkey tail. They don't have any psychoactive effects, so they are not psychedelic mushrooms. But what they do is that they regulate your immune system. So sometimes you regulate it down, and sometimes it regulates it up. It rebalances. That's their main properties. And every medicinal mushrooms have their own unique properties. Like, for instance, lion's mane. Of course, Paul Stamets talks a little bit about that, and that's why people got interested. The microdosing community started to get interested in these medicinal mushrooms, to combine it, to stack it, they say, because lion's mane have the property that it increases neuroplasticity or neurogenesis. So it helps to build new neurons and neural pathways. And psilocybin also does that. So if you combine it, that synergy helps to increase your neuroplasticity, especially when you combine it with niacin. That's vitamin B3. Vitamin B3 causes a flush, so your blood vessels start to do that. Sometimes people find it unpleasant. But if you stack that with lion's mane and with psilocybin containing mushrooms, then it acts as a transporter, or as like a taxi driver that guides or brings these compounds through the blood-brain barrier to the end of the dendrites of the neurons, where that neurogenesis started to happen. So that is why Paul Stamets developed the stacking formula called Stamets Stack. You can look it up on our website. And it's a very interesting way to microdose with. And last week he also mentioned it, and we talked about that flush, and he adjusted his protocol. He adjusted his intake. So you take a lesser, because you have a protocol of 4 days on and 3 days of rest. And 4 days on is is a lot for a lot of people. So that's why you take not more than 0.1 dried mushrooms and not more than 15 milligrams of niacin. And last year he mentioned take 200 milligrams of niacin, for instance. But a lot of people encountered these flushes and find it very unpleasant. So he downgraded it and fine-tuned it downwards. So I'm very happy with that, because we get a lot of questions on, I get a flush and it's very unpleasant. Why do I have to take so much? And it's like, okay, Paul Stamets, it was his hypothesis, but now he's starting to show. And I was at ICPR conference in Haarlem last year, and I talked to him, and I asked him, why is this protocol, and why do you take it 4 days in a row? And then at first he said, protocols are not that important, but I was like, okay, the whole world is listening to you. That it's really important to emphasize why, and why you have this protocol, for instance, and why you have this stack. So then he nuanced it and mentioned it that, if you want to increase your neuroplasticity, then you have to build up and stack it for a longer period of time, or else you every time you pause that growth. So that is why you take it 4 days in a row. And to avoid tolerance, you have a 3 days period of rest or break.
Yeah, it definitely makes sense to me to have a protocol indeed, because you can also journal on the days off and the days on to see and tell the differences. Yeah. You mentioned neuroplasticity earlier when you talked about lion's mane, for example. There was also one of the questions that I liked from my followers that mentioned that is the effect temporarily of microdosing, or do you really change structures in your brain when you microdose for a longer time?
Yeah, well, that all depends on what you do with it, of course. So we always say a successful microdosing journey is if you don't need it anymore. That's not really a business model, but that's where we're working on. Like, okay, so because if you have a trajectory of 2 months of microdosing and you gain a lot of insights, and then you integrate these insights, what's most important, it's a buzzword, of course, integration. But if you don't do anything with these insights and these realizations, then you didn't learn anything. So, but you can imagine if you have implemented and integrated your insights. For instance, my first insight with a high dose, for instance, when I was 17, then I knew, okay, I don't have to take the story I tell myself too seriously, because that's my truth. That's how I perceive the world. But there are 6 or 7 billion people living in this world and have a different truth. So I decided not to take myself and my story too seriously. That really helped me to live a positive life and seeing things from a different perspective and have respect for other people's opinions or viewpoints and those kind of things. Because I also put my opinions and my truth on a scale to find, or on a balanced scale to find out, is this true? Where do I get that from, or those kind of things. But I needed to integrate that insight. So with microdosing, with higher doses, I slowly started to implement that in my daily routine. And so, yeah, then it's everlasting if you do it like that. So then you don't need a microdose anymore to have like a more patience or some other insights that you gained. So yeah, but yeah. And then after a trajectory, and you say, okay, I have these insights. I have the journal, and I say, okay, these insights I gained, but did I integrate it already? If not, then you can continue your microdosing journey, or without microdosing, because you have these insights now, and then really pay attention to your daily routine and where the triggers are that you are not aware, and you're not patient, and you're not whatever you want to discover for yourself and to improve for yourself.
So, yeah, interesting. Yeah, I can definitely understand that the way you treat it is very important in the way it will last in your life, the benefits of it.
Yeah. Yeah, and a lot of people use it more intuitively afterwards. So if and it all has to do with your energy level. The higher your energy level is, and the more aware you are, and the more in the present moment you can be. And sometimes, yeah, it's like a wave, of course, and everything can lower your energy. So then, yeah, people think, oh, it's time again to microdose for a while, and then you can touch upon these insights and being more aware of yourself again. And because it's a never-ending process, of course, personal growth.
No, I agree, definitely. Okay, so we touched on microdosing itself, the connection with nature, which I find one of the most important things of consciousness in general. Different types of mushrooms. We have stressed the importance of consciousness, but I wanted to talk about a shared experience we have. I mean, you are way more experienced than I am. I am just a noob in that sense. But we have microdosing, we have higher dosing, and then we have, to me, it felt like the end game, and it was ayahuasca. I did that earlier this year, and I am confident to say that I could not have the beautiful journey I had on that day without the journey of microdosing before, because I experienced a lot more consciousness in my body. I experienced a lot more of my train of thought. Could you elaborate a bit about the effects of ayahuasca, for example?
Yeah, what I like that you mentioned that microdosing helped you to get a better in-depth journey, and we believe the strength in the combination of microdosing and a higher dose journey, maybe to before you get a higher dose, but also maybe afterwards to implement and integrate these insights you've gained during a high dose journey. And like you mentioned that ayahuasca is the end game. Yes, it's not child's play. Also, mushrooms are not for everyone and not child's play. So yeah, we need to have a disclaimer on this, that it's not for everyone. And you really need to do your research before you start to take it. And it's very important that the facilitators screen you and to find out where in your phase you are in your process, because that really helps to give you a very good experience, and for especially for ayahuasca, because it can make you very confusing also if you are in the wrong state of mind and in the wrong phase of your process, then you can get out of it more confusing than before. But yeah, like you did it on a good way to first learn the healing power of microdosing, and then slowly prepare yourself for a journey. And yeah, it's very internal process, and it can be very confusing. And it can have a total reset also, but it can also make you confused, because like, okay, you had your truth and thought you built your whole identity around it, and then it gets wiped away by ayahuasca, and then you need to rebuild yourself again, and what is your truth, who am I, and who I want to be, and those kind of things. So yeah, it's good to do some research before, because it's a very powerful substance. But yeah, I think it's for people who are interested in it, and it's also, if you have had a great experience, please don't convince people to do it, because it has to come on your path, and then people starting that it has to come from their interest, because if you convince people to do it, then you're also responsible for the outcome, and then they hold you accountable, also can hold you accountable. So that is very important. I think that if you're interested and it comes on your path, do your research, and then you can slowly try to find a facilitator or a ceremony or a group or a good friend, and then you can try to find out what it is. But your question was like, what are the effects of ayahuasca? Yeah, well, the main effect of a high dose journey of all sorts of LSD, of psilocybin or ayahuasca, is that some people call it ego death, but your ego is not dying. It's just going to the background. And that all has to do with the default mode network. The default mode network is a part in your brain where like Michael Pollan says in his book, How to Change Your Mind, where your ego sits, where the house of the ego is, where rumination start, where daydreaming is, where talking to yourself is. And Imperial College in London, they did brain scans on people with a high dose, and they found out that exactly that part of the brain amps in activity, so it almost stops being active. And that is exactly why people feel more one with nature and with themselves, but also that they feel that their ego is dissolved, because the other parts of the brain start to communicate better and more with each other, but the part of the ego is dampened. So yeah, that's the main effect of psychedelics in a high dose journey, is that you feel like one with nature, feeling connected to everything, feeling connected to the universe. And I did a 5-MeO DMT session last month, and I experienced, like, with every cell of my body, I experienced the 0 point state, like being as close as to the source as possible in a non-dual state, like no judgment, no polarity, no nothing, only Wow. like being in the eye of the hurricane. So like it's a 0 point, and that's what you can experience. But it can also be very chaotic. So yeah, you can have experience of being born and dying, like that cycle, for instance, that you can. I had one experience where I experienced that for 3 times in a row. Like I saw myself as a seed and being, how do you call it? Being born and grow up to be old, and then dying, and then it started all over again. And after three times, I shouted out, "Yes, now I understand. I know now I've worked. I don't have to have that cycle again." Those kind of things you can experience. So yeah, and most important, if you want to do these kind of experiences, you need to be able to surrender yourself. So not swim against the river, but let it flow like a river and like a cloud. Just go along with it, even if there's like difficult situation or difficult experience during that journey. because that's where the healing is. That's where, like, you go through the pain. That's the difference between an SSRI and doing psychotherapy with the psychedelic is that you go through the pain, and then there's healing. There is the possibility of healing, instead of damping the whole thing and not numbing yourself with an SSRI. That can be very helpful, of course, in the very early stage of your process, but yeah, it can interfere with your process of life in the end.
Yeah, I agree. And what I find beautiful is the similarities between those higher dose and those microdosing. And that is why I wanted to have this conversation, is because microdosing is something you can do every day. And I think you should do every day if it's the right time in your life.
Always take one day pause, eh?
Of course. Yeah, of course.
On a regular basis, yeah.
Follow the protocol. But of course, we cannot do higher doses like macro doses every week. So in this busy society, I think microdosing is the perfect way to pick a small piece of a macro dose and adjust it to your daily life and implement it into your daily life, because it brings you a bit back to your connection with yourself. And that is at least how I experienced it. I mean, did you do a lot of ayahuasca ceremonies?
Well, not a lot. I was more into LSD and psilocybin and San Pedro. So I focused on these 2-3 substances more than, because I didn't like ceremonies in groups and where people are puking and someone else does the music. So I was like, okay, I want to do that myself. So I guided a lot of sessions in an informal setting. I did a lot of high dose journeys with LSD and with psilocybin, but what I like about microdosing actually is that you can, these insights you gain with higher doses, and you mentioned already before that you can do that every week. You don't want to do that every week, and then you miss the point. So if you have an insight, you also need to implement it and integrate it, or else it doesn't make sense to do it every week and having these same insights but don't do anything with it. But the beauty of microdosing is that you can have these same insights, but they come more gently towards you. So, and they also slowly during your daily routine, they come to you. I always like to compare it with, like, a high dose journey is like a hurricane of insights, chaos, and surrealistic things that you need to process. And microdose journey is more like a soft breeze that these insights come very slowly, but you can have these same insights. And so, and so sometimes for people who don't want to take a high dose journey, it can be very powerful and very, very beneficial. Although, these high dose journeys can really reset your whole perspective of who you are and how you want to perceive the world. So it can both be very powerful. But
yeah, I agree. And what you mentioned earlier is that you should not recommend somebody doing it, especially with the macrodose. I agree, definitely. I had last year, and maybe the last couple of years, I had a feeling or a thought that I wanted to do ayahuasca someday. And I think it was last December that there was a moment that was like, it's time. Now it's time to do it. And it was not a thought process, but I just felt I am ready to open that door right now. And I cannot tell you the moment that you should do it, because you will know at the moment in time that you are ready for it. And I think that's really important with a macrodose. And ayahuasca seems very big and almost scary, but the way I see the similarities with microdosing is that what I experienced during that macrodose of ayahuasca in that ceremony is, I feel like when we get born, you are new, fresh, totally in the flow of the day of yourself, of your consciousness. And when you get older, you accumulate thoughts and on thoughts on thoughts on thoughts, and you get almost rigid into those thought patterns. And what that microdose did for me, macrodose, sorry, the ayahuasca, is everything I thought I was crumbled, and all of my fears, all of my beliefs, everything I thought I wanted to be, or thought I had to do, crumbled, and it detached of myself. It was like I could look at it, and I was like, I could feel that it was no longer mine. Like you said, the ego death. I died in the desert, and after that, I resurrected. It was crazy, but the resemblance with microdosing is that the macrodose is really a big experience, and everything is detached. At least is what I experienced. And with a microdose, is what you provide, is touching on little parts of such experiences. And I couldn't have the macrodose experience without the microdose experience. It was a long story, but yeah.
Yeah, well, it's beautiful that you say that it's like the state of being a child, being fresh, being new in the world, and perceiving things like on an empty, fresh slate or perspective.
Canvas, yeah.
And that, I think, that is the main goal of, if you want to use psychedelics and you want to have personal growth, is going back to that state of being in the now, being in the present moment, enjoy every part of life, accept everything that is. And so that is that for me personally, that is the goal, is my goal, and my journey is to and of course in psychotherapy they talk about the inner child and those kind of things, that you touch the inner child, but it's touching and conditioning yourself and hacking yourself to be in that state of curiosity, and not in being in the knowing, but being in the curiosity, and being in the mystery, and seeing the mystery of life and nature and yourself. And that, yeah, I always tend to wanted to go back in that state of like when I was a child and didn't have any time perspective, all these thoughts, all these embedded patterns that I conditioned myself during my 50 years of life on Earth. So yeah, I think if we can touch on that, and for, yeah, even if it's a few seconds a day, and then you can prolong it every day, and then later on you can just condition yourself, and you have hacked your system to be and also to see your brain not as I am this. It's just a tool. It's a tool. And of course you tell yourself stories, but you're much more than only the story you tell yourself. You're much more than just Yorick. Because if I ask, like, who are you? It's like, yeah, I'm Yorick, but yeah, that's a name. You're not that. You're not your thoughts. And of course, this is the whole Eckhart Tolle. I don't know if people know Eckhart Tolle, and he really explains it really good. But if you identify with your mind, with your thoughts, then then suffering will emerge, because your thoughts always are in the present, in the past, and in the future. So fear and anxiety, those kind of things. But if you observe your thoughts, and being the observer, and know that you are the observer and not your thoughts, then you get detached, and that's where awareness and awakening comes from. And that's the state you want to be in, to really go on the path of personal growth.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree. It is the most truest form of yourself, and it's about reconnecting with that being in yourself, I believe.
Yeah.
And I'm a very practical guy as well. If you want to make the realest music, or the best business, or the best connection with your parents or the people around you, you first have to connect with yourself. And that's what microdosing and macrodosing did for me. It's very clear. I'm a different person than I was 5 years ago, and that is partially thanks to this process. Okay.
Beautiful.
What I wanted for this conversation is for to that it was a familiar story for the people who are already on this journey, like a confirmation, but most of all for people that are thinking about exploring this path, that they wanted to, yeah, to gain a bit more knowledge about the process of microdosing, macrodosing, mushrooms, nature, consciousness. I think we touched on a lot of good topics about this topic. Do you have any advice for people who are on this journey or exploring themselves on this journey?
I'm always careful to give advice. I tend to say don't believe people who give advice. But yeah, well, I think the most important is that psychedelics and of course life also teach you, but psychedelics can really be of support of living your life from your core, from your intuition. And I think intuition is the most important thing because you know these answers already. So, and if you take like, you can find out for yourself if you decide to take a high dose of a magic mushroom, for instance, and you ask yourself a question, then the information comes in one bit and pieces, like poof, and that's your intuition. Because and you know the answer yourself, but you like to hear it from a therapist or from someone else to get confirmation or something. But I think the most important is to learn to trust your intuition and know the difference between your thoughts and your fears and your needs and your intuition. Because these thoughts can interfere so you can tell the difference between your intuition and your thoughts and your fears and your needs and your greediness or whatever. So yeah, first find out that and then living from your core will teach you how to be on the path that you are in life, and psychedelics can really be of help walking that path. So as long as that path has a heart, because every path leads nowhere. It leads to that you are going to die in the end. So you better walk a path that has a heart, that has that resonates with your mission, with your vision. And so, and if you don't have a vision or a mission or a goal in life, then write it down. What do you want? There are like some techniques like, okay, imagine yourself being 80 years old and visualize that you look back on your life and what did you want to experience? What did you want to learn? How do you want to be? And of course, then you also touch on that all these outer factors are not that important, and love for your family, for yourself is more important, those kind of insights. And sometimes it helps to write that down and make it more concrete. And then, because the brain needs a goal. If you don't have a goal, then you don't have a direction to go to. So make it as concrete and as specific as possible. And implement almost a remembrance that how it feels to be the person you want to be and what you want to achieve or what you want to be connected to. And for me personally, psychedelics help me a lot on this path, but it doesn't have to be psychedelics. It can also be like breath work and meditation or yoga, whatever, and be balanced. And you mentioned it also that you're a lot in your head and it gave you bodily awareness. Microdosing for me is exactly the same. For a long period of time, my body was on the automatic pilot walking behind my head like this. And now my body and mind are more in balance because the intelligence, or not intelligence, but you're not seated in your head alone. You're seated in every cell of your body. And if you have balanced that out, then it also raises consciousness. And I'm really aware of that now I take care more of my body. I stopped drinking for instance, for a longer period of time. I started smoking weed, I did that for years. And so, that really helps me to take care of my body more and more and being more in balance with my body and my mind. So, that you can do that with psychedelics or without. It's not a promo talk, but it helps me to be more connected to my body and my intuition.
I agree. Beautifully said, I believe. There's nothing wrong with promo talk. Before we started this conversation, I told you, let's promote Microdose and Microdosing Institute maximally, because I believe you guys should be number one, at least in the Netherlands and way beyond. Where can we find you?
Yes. Well, just Google microdosing and you'll find us. We had the luck that we were the first in the Netherlands to stumble upon microdosing, or at least the first one was Martijn Scherp who started Higher Consciousness and Synthesis. I wrote an article. He wrote about microdosing in 2015 or something, and then slowly it entered Holland and Europe. But yeah, we were the first, and we are still the first who build a platform only specifically around microdosing. You had the third wave, that's also a platform, but they also are into psychedelics in general and not only microdosing. So yeah, that is why, because we wrote a lot of content and a lot of realistic information, then yeah, if you Google us, then you will see Microdosing Institute or for the Dutchies, microdosing.nl on the first page of Google. And yeah, that really helps us to emphasize that it's really, really important to have a realistic viewpoint. Also, when you start microdosing, because we guide a lot of people, and the first 15 minutes, I am down regulating their expectancies, for instance, because they think that's like a quick fix or a solution to their problems. But you get more out of it if you have a realistic perspective on microdosing. So yeah, where can people find us? Microdosing.nl, microdosinginstitute.com. That's our website. You can find us on Instagram at Microdosing Institute. But we didn't talk about that. My side project was in 2018. We guided people, and they said, okay, where can I buy truffles, for instance, or reliable source of products? And I always had an interest on the people behind these products. So why do they sell them? Or how do they make them? And so, yeah, I decided to, on my own, as a side project, build an online shop where I get to know these people who sell it. So I can offer a reliable source of products. And the main reason was to cover the cost of our mission with Microdosing Institute. So that's how the shop was built and born. And yeah, because we wanted to be independent of sponsorships, of donations, of investors, because yeah, a lot of companies, they attract investors, and then you are dependent on their ways and how they want it. And I didn't want it. I don't like that. So now I'm totally independent. And I learned about, like, we have a podcast channel on YouTube or Spotify or wherever. And so, yeah, we have a lot of podcasts or interviews with the people behind these products. Like, for instance, the developer of these extracts of medicinal mushrooms, and where our Mart from Voetsporen, or where the cacao comes from. We didn't want, because cacao can be very, if it comes from Congo, if it doesn't have the right certificate. So yeah, we collaborate with these people from Pure Cacao, from Voetsporen, with fresh mushrooms. We know, like, fresh mushrooms is the number one truffle farmer who has been around for 30 years. Hans is 80 years old and has the best knowledge of how to grow the truffles. So yeah, without saying more, because we mainly focus on Microdosing Institute, and as a side project we have microdose.nl. That's my shop, and I co-founded it with my friend who wished to remain anonymously. But yeah. And we also have Discord, because on Instagram and Facebook, we build a community, but we also are aware that it's as leak as it can be. So Discord is very safe. It's a closed online forum. You can find us there also. So we can all find these information, how to find us, on our website.
Plenty of informations, plenty of sources, and lots of knowledge, and a lot of lovely people. I mean, I know you, I know Jokabin a little bit. At least we know each other. And Naomi from the coachings, a lot of lovely, lovely people who have a lot of knowledge and who can be of help in your microdose or plant medicine journey. So thank you for your time, Hein.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, well, about our team, we like to collaborate with people and have people in our team who are like having a pure intention and are resonating on our same frequency. So that's why we slowly build a small team around us, like Brittany and Wieneke and Mart and and of course Jacobine, who I founded with. And we find that very important, not to just collaborate with whatever we want, just with organizations like Open Foundation and APRA and the Psychedelic Society UK and San Francisco. And just want to be mindful of what the intentions are behind people who want to work in the psychedelic space. Yeah.
Beautiful. Well,
not to forget mentioning the Guild of Guides. Sorry, also that's like an umbrella for all truffle retreats in Holland and across the world. Yeah,
very good to know. Well, let's spread the microdose message, and I hope to talk to you soon.
Yeah, I hope to see you on the Biohacker Summit in October again. Also,
most definitely.
Yeah.
Thank you, Hein.